It's raining outside. I'm not sure how long the power is going to last, and this is probably the absolute worst time to record something absolutely guaranteed to destroy my sanity. So we're going to jump right into part, I guess, F of TexTalks BattleTech, the Exodus to Elementals Part 1, also known as the intermission just ended. We're going on to Part 3, Kerensky's Legacy, and I have been told this is a great time to contemplate the merits of gaining alcoholism as a personal attribute. I'm summarizing because everyone else in Discord and comments and Twitter were much more explicit. Also, some good actual mixing instructions that I don't have the skill to replicate. Wish I did, but I'm not a bartender. I got no skill there. Might try it. Probably won't go well. And may or may not involve intoxication at the point where it might be newsworthy and or Florida man outside of Florida. But I'm not going to talk about that because I have a feeling this is going to be very much accurate no matter what I do. So we're going to jump right in and see just how depressing this isn't, because it's going to be happy and fun, and I'm going to keep telling myself that for as long as it takes to believe it. And it's not going to last very long. You guys know the deal. There's a link below to the original video. Hit it up. It's text. You know he's good. Do that. And when you're done, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get started. Yep. Just a nice,
after thoroughly surveying the
story
world and making as certain as
over the sad
possible
music.
they were suitable for permanent colonization, the SLDF fleet began to rapidly shift from survival in space to a dedicated colonization effort.
Okay.
It was a fundamental change in mission parameters, so unused equipment, weapons, and warships were placed into storage or mothballs for later use if necessary.
Not bad idea.
Few thought they'd need to touch a weapon in the near future. And for some, the conversion from a military life to a civilian one wasn't exactly a smooth transition.
I mean, I'm not surprised about that. There's actually historical precedence to the Roman Empire rewarding most of the centurions' land because they thought, you know what? People who we've only taught to fight are going to be really good farmers. It went about as well as you would expected, and it caused a lot of issues. But they're doing that here. Making the same mistake. They got really no other choice at this point, but did they just not recruit any people to do agriculture? Yeah, they probably made the same choice of, you know what, we want to retire. Let's be farmers. This is going to be an issue. More importantly, that line about they wouldn't need a gun. No one believed that. I don't even know what happens directly next other than 300 years in the future. And even I know if I didn't know what was coming down the pipeline 300 years in the future, that would just be one of those lines where I'm like, oh yeah, the foreshadowing isn't thick right here. It's a fucking brick that someone threw at your head with tactical precision. Also by brick, I mean a continent-sized glacier that was then spray painted red just to achieve some continuity in the metaphor. They're conscientious that way in metaphors. Yeah.
The SLDF found themselves in a case of turning swords into plowshares.
Hey, I actually think I recognize these from the
formerly military
Schemes
equipment
BattleTech game.
was immediately pressed into service in the name of survival, or cannibalized for parts to keep people alive.
Mechwarrior 5? Looks
However, there was the ever-present issue of manpower. After all, a colony in a delicate balance of survival doesn't need 100 divisions of fighting men and women. Colonies need civilian infrastructure.
They didn't bring.
They were in need of hard work, sweat, and determination focused on making
it's a good
go
thing there's
it.
a time-honored tradition of people coming back from the war.
The order of things was absolutely necessary for Starleague in Exile to survive at all. Starleague in Exile began to force the majority of the SLDF to test out and become civilians.
Test out?
To control demobilization required every member of the...
Okay, one, I recognize when they used this image earlier for the people going into the Mars Civil War in the previous one. And here it's Plowshares program. Turn your rifle in. I'm sorry, it's not even a joke. Turn in your rifle and pick up a hoe. It might also be meant that way unironically because, you know, manpower is a problem. The easiest way to fix that, as of literally early 1900s and most of human history prior to that, was having kids. So unironically, that works. Also, gender neutral because everyone's a hoe in the future. Yeah. Corn, the new war. That's just corny. Free tractor with every uniform turn in. Well, the Marines are going to get screwed over. They only have the one that they wear all the time and nothing else. See? I have made the joke. Ha! I am not obligated to say that due to familial ties to a Marine who would be very disappointed if I said anything else. Yes, Marines are tough. They only have the one and they keep it spotless. I hope he's not watching anymore because I'm going to make a lot of jokes about Marines later. You fought a Mars, now fight boredom and depression. Yeah, this one isn't even a joke. This is literally setting up everything about to happen. Oh boy.
SLDF test or be forced out. Only the best of the best would stay in uniform, and the rest would become the genesis of a new civilian working class. 75% of the SLDF
There's the
tested
beginning
out,
of the
from the
civilian
lowest ranking soldier to the highest ranking general.
divide.
Only those of extraordinary aptitude, skill, and health were allowed to stay in uniform. The now unneeded vast arsenals of weaponry were placed into stockpiles called Brian caches, paying homage to Starleague's own Castles Brian. Warships were placed into reserve fleets or mothballed.
Castles Brian? I feel like I'm missing context, but okay, sure, why not? Let's do it.
Around planetary bodies in the event they'd ever be needed in the future.
There must be huge caches that they've probably been raided already.
And many of the demobilized SLDF served in a newly established...
Nothing to say, just I don't think I've ever seen this style of starship in BattleTech art before, and it's so cool. Oh, it's like it has a front section, the linkage, and the engine, which honestly reminds me a lot of the Markiplier in Spaceship. Considering how that first part went, and I haven't played the second part yet, I probably shouldn't make that connection because one, they're not connected, and two, no, wait, Markiplier is the guy who more or less got around to helping to finance, not finance, but was a credited asset to the first Astartes project, so he's aware of Warhammer 40k, and usually if you're aware of Warhammer K, you're usually aware of BattleTech, so maybe it was intentional? Normally I would logic that out, but I can't actually say it's not impossible.
Group called the Explorers Corps, who began to chart nearby star systems for habitable worlds and exploitable resources. While the demobilizations were necessary for survival, it seems in retrospect optimistic, or at the very least hopeful, to believe for such a massive change overnight to succeed. Many of these brave men and women had seen decades of horrific combat, all of them deeply bearing the scars of their campaigns in some way or another.
Literally just an entire planet of
most unable to
PTSD.
forget the horrors of classed
Planets,
worlds
sorry, 5
and
planets.
burning cities, turning most of them into civilians. Forcing them to change their lifestyle overnight was a gamble. While some adapted well enough, many had long ago forgotten how to be civilians, or, in some cases, even civil. People who had...
I'm not drinking right now because it's depressing. I'm drinking right now because it's the same damn issue that comes up after every war, no matter what country it is. The entire history of warfare is always followed by that period of stand down that eventually comes up, and it does not go well because people don't adapt. Not well. Hell, there's an entire round of fiction about the scarred grizzled veteran coming back and not fitting in. It's a freaking stereotype at this point because it's just a universal truth that that's just a thing that happens, and they have literal plans just full of that. I thought they brought civilians with them this entire time. I thought the reason the ships were so packed is that they brought all the families, all the civilians, all the people who could make it work. This is giving me the impression that while I'm sure some of those people joined in from other locations, it was usually family and friends who were still associated with the war, not the overwhelming support they would need to actually have that base. And okay. I was harping on in the previous episodes about how Kerensky, when he finally got a message, I don't think it was far enough and they needed more set goals to work towards. And now I'm just wondering, oh dear God, he just stripped them of everything because only the people in the SLDF are still going to get that goal. And everyone else is like, okay, you move to the side now. How there isn't going to be a civil war, I have no idea. It's not even, I don't even, calling it now, and I hope I'm wrong. What's going to happen, sorry, more JoJo fashion. Your next line is, they are going to then start a civil war. Someone who may or may not be a dick named Nicholas is going to provoke it. And a lot of people are going to die. I have no idea if that's true. I've not looked at this part of the history in the timeline.
Campaign hardly felt rewarded for being told to now farm and like it. A new life forced upon them, and then with a complete lack of basic amenities, let alone any form of luxury, set the stage for future discontent. For a time, though, the SLDF took to their new lives without much complaint.
Okay, that's actually surprising as fuck. Like, literally, I can only see this as the entire idea of... Problems make sense here. Anyone taking to it is surprising. Hell, it would have been easier if he went for a full-on manifest destiny approach of, you see that land? Claim it, it's yours. Giving a sense of competition, but he's just being civil about it. It makes sense, but at the same time, giving people something they feel like they've gained, letting them build, giving them a sense of accomplishment, but just saying you're no longer part of the thing that gave you meaning for decades. I'm sorry. This is just horrible mishandling. But again, I wouldn't expect Kerensky to know how to do this because he's been in that same situation where he did it for decades. This is not his specialty. And I don't think there's anyone they brought with them who would have had this as a specialty because most of the Inner Sphere was always kind of ready to fuck things up. Take that however you want. I'm sure it means it in any way possible. Anyway.
It was, after all, a welcome reprieve from years of cramped starship living, wandering the cosmos aimlessly, and the horrors of their now distant
indigenous
past.
Species?
Kerensky closed the book on the past as best he could by broadcasting toward the Inner Sphere a final message. The Voice of Kerensky broadcast we covered in the Ameris Civil War lecture series, but it is absolutely worth bringing up again for historical reference as a companion to the Hidden Hope doctrine. The Voice of Kerensky message was one of hope, conveying that perhaps one day the Inner Sphere would not be a place of turmoil, and that future generations may learn to live among each other in peace. Broadcast September the 9th, 2786, the Voice of Kerensky message would take at least 1,000 years to reach the Inner Sphere on broadband.
So theoretically, it's still not going to reach the rest of the Inner Sphere, even though it was
a message
intercepted.
of hope, but prudent enough to be sent the slowest means possible. It would be time enough for people to grow up, time enough for people to find a better way. In theory, anyway.
You know what? Normally I'd say this is hyper-real, or not realistic, but optimistic to the point of unrealism, and this is just going to be my personal take. I know people are going to disagree with this, and I fully acknowledge they have a valid point right off the bat. I kind of want, in some small corner of the BattleTech history, to say that in 1,000 years from this, so maybe 700-ish, maybe 650-ish years on from the most advanced part of the storyline, this message reaches the Inner Sphere proper, not the early intercepts, but the Inner Sphere proper itself. And in those 1,000 years, things actually have calmed down and they are in an era of peace. Maybe not perfect, but just overall peace. I want that to be real so that something of his dream doesn't turn out to be a lie. Because I know that almost everything else is betrayed.
By strange coincidence, that very message would only be heard 260 short years later, but...
Oh, 260?
That's
that was further.
Another story.
Still earlier than
For a short time, though, there was indeed...
That is a very big set of earrings on both of them.
Starleague in exile. Cities were built.
I don't like earrings.
Houses became homes. People farmed, started families, and did their best to forget their troubles. And folks did their best to start over. In 2800, things began to change.
How?
Perhaps it was the age of their leader, as Alexander Kerensky was by this time 100 years old and straining even the life expectancy afforded by the very best in advanced Starleague medical knowledge.
I mean, technically, people reach 100 years old now, and a lot of the crazy-ass shit they come with in Canopus, in the Inner Sphere, in the modern time, which is the technologically reduced version, I guess modern time, the Clan Civil War era Canopus, the medical technology is pretty damn advanced. Also, nice edit on the liver spots and the extra wrinkles. Still crazy. But I'm kind of surprised 100 years is pushing it. I mean, maybe because he's so far out of the inner sphere that their doctors are more medical ones who are used to working on a shoestring budget without all the fanciest, most up-to-date everything. Although they might very well also have that because of the ships. I really don't know. But it just seems weird that 100 years would be. I was expecting closer to 150 to 200 because of just rejuvenation treatments. Theoretically, telomere refreshes might work. It's not actually something people have known how to do. It's just theoretical at this point. Kind of surprised they can't do that in this time period, though.
Not had by any standards an easy life, and with many long decades of stress, pain, and loss.
I mean, if he wasn't already bald, he'd lost all his hair by now.
To hold a dream together with zero room for error. He was weighed down by his most recent and perhaps deepest sorrow, as just 4 years earlier, his wife Katyusha contracted a virus, grown ill, and died. This, when coupled with his advanced age, meant he was unable to tend to Starleague in exile with his former vigor. The depressed ancient general couldn't hold the reins of power with the strength he once did.
And he has to pass it
And
on.
certainly didn't trust his sons to assume those responsibilities for him.
Here it goes.
And so, slowly, things began to fall apart. At least that is one interpretation of events. I'm going to give you a different reason for what happened next. 2 words. Capellan fuckery.
What?
Let me elaborate. I see the genesis of the problem as that once peace had taken root and people began to muster out of Starleague, they had not only cast away their uniforms, but a military mindset without the discipline of a daily regimen, commands to be obeyed, and consequences for disobeying them.
I was going to say, but no one of the... It was all SLDF that left, not the Capellans. And then it was like, where are the SLDF drawn from? Literally everywhere. Also, is it just me, or is this guy punching this guy in the face as he's being shot from behind and also getting stabbed in the chest at the same time? And may or may not be shot through by the guy behind him? God damn, that is a pretty involved piece there.
Order starts to break down, and a disorderly former SLDF soldier was probably at this point in time the most dangerous thing in the goddamn galaxy.
And there's an entire
There's also another
planets filled with people,
of a uniform,
most of them who
as
aren't
it
in
is a
uniform
reminder
anymore.
of which side you're on.
And told they're not good enough.
Uniform and following a cause, as the SLDF had up to this point, it didn't matter where you were from or what you thought, so much as what you were fighting for.
Like how they took one of the guys from Amaris' side.
To overlook the shortcomings of your brothers and sisters in arms because they're part of the same mission as you are. You're looking out for them and they you.
He's just hammering it home. These guys are basically the best of the best, the biggest badasses. And I know I've already said this a few times, and it keeps getting hammered home every damn second. The problem here is that then there's a bunch of people who had that as their identity, had that as their thing, and they were great. And a lot of them were just told, you're not great enough, get out. Also, we're taking away literally everything you know and love, and then we're telling you to get out. I mean, sure, technically they had already lost everything they know and loved, and if they had stayed, they probably would have lost their lives or joined a mercenary band and been very successful. They're probably regretting that more for that reason, because they could probably do that. But god damn, this is,
the situation may suck, but so long as you're in it together, everyone stands to benefit.
Anymore.
It is further worth noting that by design, the SLDF was a multinational, multicultural fighting force for the benefit of the entire Starleague, so that not a single house nor personal allegiance was allowed to interfere with the dedication of duty to the state above all. In the Starleague uniform, you were fighting for the men and women at your side under the flag you carried. Nothing else really mattered. But with Amaris long dead, Starleague long gone, and now with nothing to do but try to start a new life, people had to define, perhaps for the very first time, what mattered to them most. People being people, falling back on old ways was easiest. And soon old loyalties and a re-emergence of successor state ideologies began to take root.
And this is why I kept saying that they needed a defined physical goal they can work towards. Even like the doctrine is something, but it's amorphous. It's not enough. Like, if they had just done, okay, colonization efforts, trying to go out there and fight against the reality, like, give the people who are tough and gritty, give them things they want. Let people wash out because they chose to. Give them, like, okay, if you leave now, we're going to let you do this, but you got to earn, like, do it, earn this, fight for your life. Give them something. Or the Explorers Corps, like, people who want to go further, get more resources, try to get more for the people. Just give them something they can achievably work towards, not go do a thing and you're not one of the Star League anymore. Even though technically nothing's around, you're just not us. You're not good enough. Go. People need definable goals to work towards. If they make their own, great. If they can't, give them something they might want to work towards. And they're just not.
Before long, relative prosperity and expansionism itself began to drive a wedge between various factions, all eagerly attempting to exploit the same limited resources.
This is why exploration
There's something most of you should know by now. Never trust a Capellan, because their favorite sheath for any blade they have is your back.
I thought it was their own backs. Like, don't the Capellans backstab everyone but themselves the most? That's more just a question on me. Also, they have 5 planets with limited amount of people, and they're already limited on resources? I thought those were paradise worlds. It's probably the more advanced resources they would need specific industries to gather then, rather than just wood, lumber, water type deals. Yeah, that makes more sense. Still, though, you think it would just be an expansionist dream at this point. Because it's like, okay, we're just going to do this now.
On a jungle world now named
to start with, then.
Small-scale clashes, skirmishes, and disorderly riots broke out between colonists of the Federated Suns and the Capellan Confederation. People had by now fallen in line with ideologies carried from the inner sphere and banded together to fight those of opposing loyalties. People were initially content to riot and skirmish for a time as old enemies decided to finally hash things out. Sadly, mirroring events in the inner sphere unfolding simultaneously, it can be said that old hatreds die hard, while lawlessness was initially suppressed by those few SLDFs still in uniform and what modest resources they still had available. They couldn't be everywhere at once. And so, in 2801, open rebellion had broken out. Rebel forces, nearly all of them Capellan, decided to declare independence from Star League in exile in May of that year. They were not merely content to say, "We quit, we're out, thanks for the ride and the colony and keeping us alive, General Kerensky." No, they were intent on making a new state from the ground up. And
okay, what is that mech? I don't recognize that design at all. Looks like something I'll get a robo, actually. Weird. More importantly, I thought it was just going to be a flat-out civil war with a lot more diverse factions, and they're kind of just recycling the inner sphere. I mean, I guess it makes sense. It's ingrained. It's not the worst thing to redefine themselves as factions they already had, but really? Seems... This is something I don't usually say about BattleTech writing, but that seems kind of lazy. Just because they go all in on everything, and now it's, yeah, the Capellans fucked up. I mean, I believe it. It's not the worst thing. It just, usually they go for all these crazy things. I thought there'd be like a splintering of people based on all these other factions. And instead it's just, yeah, we're basically just going to do the houses again. Yeah, I was kind of expecting something really different to happen, not just an ideological one. I thought it'd be more just like something to do with being in exile as opposed to just going back.
Curb stomping anyone who got in their way. To further this strategic aim,
they were curb stomping people?
Weapons and equipment from the tremendous arsenals they built
probably
years
brought up the
earlier
weapons everyone else had
to
put away.
arm their new state and began fighting their neighbors, folks loyal to the Federated Suns.
I do not recognize those.
At their disposal. Being that most of the population was quite familiar with how to effectively wage warfare, these rebels were not your weekend warriors playing games. With the SLDF being a bare handful of soldiers at this point, peacekeeping efforts soon failed, and the situation rapidly spiraled out of control.
Okay, ooh, this is a very modern art style for anything BattleTech, just because the phases don't look nearly as fucked up. And that is a massive lightning strike. I might need to end this video sooner than I expected because I might lose power. That is not good. So yeah, it is really lightning and thundering outside. I literally have no idea if any of this is even going to get saved because of how much... Yeah, recording during a lightning storm. I'm sure that won't be a bad idea. Maybe... What? I'm just going to drink for... Went a little heavier on the water aspect of that one. But yeah, they only had a handful of people left in the SLDF. I mean, I know they assumed it wouldn't go crazy, but that just seems optimistic.
Few thought that soldiers who had
Kerensky was
sacrificed so
and he
much
wasn't really in charge at that
would
point.
betray their fellows for territory, resources, and loot, but Capellans will ruin anything, as is their custom. Maybe it was the sirens blaring, or people losing their shit, or just that familiar sense of chaos needing desperate leadership, but the rebellion broke Alexander Kerensky's torpor, pushed back the fog, and brought him back to the front. Yes, 101-year-old General Alexander Kerensky had had enough of this nonsense.
Don't kill him in action. Let him just get some peace.
He dispatched his most loyal SLDF troops, led by his right hand from the American Civil War, General Airier de Chevalier, and backed him up with Major Elizabeth Hazen of Black Watch fame. The objective was to stop the rebellion from spreading, to preserve Starleague in exile, and, as necessary, destroy all opposition to good order.
On the one hand, yeah, this glorious bastard and freaking Blackwatch anything, not to mention just Hazen on top of that. Okay. Yeah, and just say if those two alone would fight, I would think they would probably hold their own. Give them troops, even a handful. Yeah. On the other hand, why do I think... Usually when something good's about to happen, there's bagpipes in the background. There's no bagpipes.
They were sent to put an end to this senseless violence and prevent further chaos from spreading in its wake.
Funny thing about that.
Eden was a dense, mostly untamed tropical jungle and filled with plenty of spaces to stage an ambush. Capellan forces had dug in deep and prepared the battlefield for the coming onslaught. When the loyalist SLDF forces made landfall, they found that the situation was worse than they would like to believe.
I didn't think about that.
Capellans had already done what they do best, which is lay traps and prepare to kill their former allies.
Oh, I thought it was
As the
backstab
SLDF
themselves.
forces approached the rebel encampments, Major Hazen's mech fell into a particularly devilish trap. A giant pit of oil that touched off the instant the mech fell in.
Oh, it's on
That's not
fire.
to say Major Hazen had grown soft, mind you, because Capellans have a PhD in backstab, betrayal, and traps like this. But with no way out and the mech rendered combat ineffective, Major Hazen ejected.
Oh, good.
Capellans being Capellans, they opened fire on the ejecting Mechwarrior with everything they had. Major Elizabeth Hazen, SLDF legend, Black Watch hero, and survivor of the American Civil War, took a heavy caliber slug to the neurohelmet mid-ejection and was out of the fight.
Wait.
For a few minutes. Yes, the...
Are you kidding me? Her mech dies. She takes a literal bullet to the head, and it just takes a few minutes for her to shake it off? Fuck it, sure, it's the Black Watch. Nukes are just an inconvenience.
The Black Watch is that hard to kill, but being shot in the head is a minor fucking inconvenience. When she awoke, head ringing and angry as all hell, she found General de Chevalier heavily engaged in close combat with the rebels. I have not touched on the brave madness of General Airier de Chevalier.
I've heard memes of him, and they're terrifying.
Men Kerensky could have ever have hoped for. This was a man, after all, who years earlier was willing to wage war on all of the great houses to restore Starleague. The short version of his career is thus. He was born in the Federated Sons, a survivor of the War of Davia.
Wait, he's from the Federated Sons? Huh. I don't know why. I never really expected that one. I thought he'd be more of a Terran hegemony guy.
On succession. An elite academy grad, an SLDF hero, and a veteran of the 320th Dragoon Regiment, which was later tragically annihilated during the hegemony campaign.
Yeah.
He was a fierce competitor, and in his youth had placed in the Martial Olympiad of 2736.
Whoa.
He was a graduate of the Elite Gunslinger program, the same program that bred the Black Watch Elite Training Regiment.
Dan Kerensky, right?
He led the heaviest fighting in the Third Hidden War. He'd hunted pirates. He made it to Lieutenant General before he even met Kerensky, and rose to Division Commander before the American-Civil War even began.
Damn.
He was known as...
Okay, personal thing. What the hell is that mech? Sorry, I know I've seen this art before, but I still have no idea what it is. I thought I figured it out by now, but I really don't have any idea.
Being a fearless, ceaseless motivator who tirelessly stood his post, worked as hard as he could, and never gave up. The man had a reputation for being fearless in the face of impossible odds, as he demonstrated by using the sharp, pointy stick of the SLDF Navy to raid Amaris while Kerensky curb-stomped the periphery in Amaris' own Rimworld's Republic. He also knew what it meant to sacrifice for the greater good. Of his 5 children, 2 were killed by Stefan Amaris as they tried to find and protect members of House Cameron. His 2 oldest children died during Operation Chieftain.
The people who were trying to protect Camerons at the time were... Just a quick question. When they say they died trying to protect them, did they die in the same way the House of Cameron is completely dead die, or are they actually confirmed dead? Because I'll be honest, I think it would be absolutely batshit funny as hell if it turned out that in some future edition, the random Cameron that survived comes back, and he also has the Chevalier household with him. Is it going to happen? I have no idea. I laugh my ass off, though.
Both having served as SLDF veterans and both having laid down their lives to try to take the hegemony back from Amaris, De Chevalier did not shirk from duty or responsibility. So when the general said, "Make rebels go away," he waded in without second thought.
Did he actually have an atlas?
So Major Hazen wakes up from a mild case of bullet to the neuro helmet to see an old Star League general with near 7 decades of military service stomping into the fray.
Oh God, he's that old.
In his atlas. Maybe it was past his bedtime, or maybe he was tired of this nonsense, or maybe he just wanted peace for once. But De Chevalier was thoroughly unamused by this Capellan bullshit and set himself to take care of this problem at point-blank range. And
I'm sorry, but why does it feel like Tex is describing them flirting? I know it doesn't have anything to do with that, but it kind of feels like this is Blackwatch flirting 101. Oh God.
Thankfully for him, that is what the Capellans had been waiting for. As he waded in, as some would say, to shield the ambushed SLDF units and buy time for a regroup, the rebels struck with full force. Using the full weight of their infantry, well-placed artillery, and sheer numbers, they overwhelmed the Atlas. De Chevalier didn't eject because to stop fighting and retreat would only endanger his men.
Oh, he goes
gave
down
his last orders. He stayed at his controls and he went down swinging. They destroyed one leg, they disabled his mech, and he continued to fight like a madman. He was bellowing orders and firing every functional weapon he had, trying to hold back the jaws of defeat with every ounce of his soul.
God damn.
But no man is immortal. With wave after wave of Inferno missiles tearing.
I hate to say this so bad, but... 1, they're showing the mech melting? Oh, it's probably oil on it. 2, really just going to point out no man is immortal because Hazen's female and she literally just survived mech caliber bullet to the head. Dear God.
Into the Atlas, General De Chevalier died in a blaze of glory.
Yeah.
And some would say that is the turning point. There was no way back now. A good man killed for no good reason. The uprising, the American-Civil War, and now the Exodus had, up to this point, claimed plenty of folks under similar circumstances. During the American-Civil War, entire worlds were glassed, put to the nuclear torch for no reason other than it denied Kerensky a staging point. Entire populations had been enslaved, starved, and gassed to prove Ameris wasn't going to go gently.
Yep.
Total war does that to a population. It relegates the act of killing to an industrial scale. And yet, with that war long over, and the trials past, with the hard times now behind them, somehow the worst of the Inner Sphere had been carried with them on the Exodus to this new frontier and manifested again to wreak havoc The once mighty men and women of the SLDF were now turning their guns on each other and fighting with the same ferocity they'd used on Amaris. What happened next is only rumored, as rebels didn't get a chance to really write much of a record of that event.
Oh?
And why that is, I'll get to presently. For with Hazen...
Yeah, I just need a second here because, holy shit, man. My comment isn't so much that it's anything Texas saying, it's just, they're talking about how this is so horrible and it claimed him, but honestly, that's probably the best way he could go. Going down, doing what you think is right for a reason you think is just, still listening to Kerensky and following a man you literally went into exile for and gave up everything, and going, fuck you, I'm going to save my people. And it doesn't, Tex didn't say he failed. He did everything he could to the best of his ability to the end, and he went down swinging, and yeah, even though it's sad he died, I think it's probably the best outcome he can expect, and better than I think a lot of people are going to get. Not going down badly, not dying to nothing, short of getting to succeed and dying at peace and satisfied. Going down, doing what you think, and doing everything you can, that's probably the next best way to go. I think he probably has one of the nicer ends. It's just weird that I know it kicks off a lot worse things, but it's not the worst outcome for him. Damn.
Fury unleashed. What had been a battle would now be remembered as a massacre.
Oh.
Major Elizabeth Hazen was thoroughly tired of this nonsense. She'd seen too many die. She'd seen too many fall in the line of duty. And this single death had stoked a flame deep in her heart. And this final act of betrayal was a catalyst for her rage. Sources say she emerged from the jungle in fury and grief, and most assuredly about to kick some ass.
Please tell me she
Perhaps
steals a mech
bagpipes
from
played
someone.
in her distant memory, perhaps with enough comrades lost along the way.
There
the
it
Black
is.
Watch officer had just finally snapped. What is known...
Not sure you can hear that in the background, but they have the main score going, just that really droning, like almost a reverberation behind her, and that's the main soundtrack. And there's Tex's voice, which has that growling bass, whatever. But then just behind it, just that first few notes, you hear a bit of the Black Watch bagpipes, and you know something badass is about to happen. But it's also much fainter. It might kick off in a few seconds, but why do I feel like this is going to be both badass, but also a perversion of it? Like, not so much that I think she's wrong. I don't think they're going to do that. I could be wrong, but it almost feels like it's that memories of faded glory type deal. I don't know how to put it. I just don't like it, because usually when it's Black Watch, they go all in on the bagpipes. And this is just more in the background, just so you hear it, just so you know about it. Not enough that you feel it.
As she picked up a sword from a dead Capellan rebel and charged, and she just started cutting people apart.
Oh.
Any Capellan she saw died. Any who ran died tired. Any who begged for mercy found there was none to be had, at least not on this day.
The irony of her actually doing the Capellan pose to kill the Capellans.
Sword in her hand.
Actually makes perfect sense for them.
Rage guiding it, proceeded to tear through Capellan lines. This insane act of defiance, a mad charge into overwhelming numbers to avenge the fallen, rallied the SLDF, because watching a Black Watch commander wading into a furious gun battle with just a sword
and winning,
screaming bloody vengeance was just the sort of thing to spark their spirit. So they joined her. An absolute carnage followed. No rebels survived that battle, or the next one, or the one after that. Hazen didn't just turn the tide of a battle. She went on to annihilate every Capellan rebel she could find on the planet and vowed vengeance on any who dared to stand in her way. Eden's population fell that day, and that particular rebellion was made extinct. But the much diminished SLDF couldn't be everywhere at once. The news of General de Chevalier's death and the chaos which followed emboldened the rebel factions, and soon there was a full-on civil war. Faction after faction seized the moment and declared independence. There was absolute chaos as neighbor turned on neighbor, faction on faction, armed with the sheer volume of weaponry the Exodus fleet had carried from the inner sphere. Everyone had realized without a unifying SLDF, without a unifying cause, they were out for themselves, and joining one of the many emerging factions was the only way to stay alive.
And here we see what very much feels like the third death of the SLDF and the Star League. The first was Amaris, the second was the Exodus, and the third is when the people themselves destroyed it. As much as I think Chevalier got the best end possible for him, he went down doing what he thought was right. And he didn't get pulled into all the bullshit that came after. God damn, I hate this! Partially because it does feel like a cop-out writing-wise. I know it had to happen some way, and this is just like, it's an established trope, it always goes this way. It's just... There's so many other things they could have dealt with, but I'm assuming back during the time where this was coming out, PTSD and war weariness were different things instead of being more or less the exact same thing. If they had written this type of lore now, I think they might have handled it better just because, well, for most of human history, you ignored this shit after a war. Instead of going so simple as, they just reverted, it would be something more nuanced as, literally stripping people from their identity so they'd pick up something more extreme. I'm not annoyed that they're fighting back. That, I think, makes sense. The fact that they're reverting to the previous group annoys me because it doesn't make sense. It would make more sense to have some extremist groups who have crazy ideologies that don't make sense, but they give them a reason to be military again, to have that purpose that was stripped from them. That would make sense. That is how these happen. That's... What annoys me is twofold. One, I think the writing just doesn't match up to reality as well as everything else in BattleTech does. Because BattleTech really does a good job of having tight narratives. And this, it feels like a 5. It's acceptable. It's fine. I have nothing really wrong with it. It's just usually they're at a 7 or an 8, and it's a step down. But also because I hate that it's watching it die again. And just... Because as badass as Hazen is, there's just that little voice in the back of my head going, there's no winner here. So yeah, between that and honestly, there's been a lot of lightning outside. I have no idea how much of that's going to come through on the mic. My mic's pretty good. It might not pick it up, but I'll be honest, I'm feeling my house shake under some of the thunder. I didn't know that was a thing. So I'm going to cut it here before I lose all power whatsoever, which has actually happened before in videos, and it's very annoying. Yeah. So for everyone watching, I'm just going to go finish this and maybe a few dozen more and try and forget everything. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one when I get something stronger than this just water. Honestly, it's mostly Diet Pepsi and nothing else. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.